Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my game review for Boise State versus Wyoming. Boise State winning this game 32-7, a huge win on the blue, looking like a completely different team than we've seen all season long, coming up against Wyoming that was looking like a team that could potentially upset the Broncos on the blue turf, and Boise State managing to get a huge win that could potentially change the course of their season. We're going to go through the offense, the defense, the special teams. We'll look at how Boise State performed against my three keys to the game, and then we'll summarize overall what this win means for the program. So, Boise State getting a win versus Wyoming. This is not a video that I thought I was going to be able to do. You all know, if you watch my game preview, that I was predicting a loss coming into this game. But Boise State, coming off of the bye week, made some key adjustments, especially defensively, which we'll talk about when we get to the defense. But they made some key adjustments across the board that allowed them to come up against Wyoming, who was also coming up against a bye week, and outperform one of the best coaches in the Mountain West, in Craig Bowl, and get a massive win on the blue. Boise State looking like the Broncos of old, with a scoreline that dominated Wyoming at home. So, what did Boise State do offensively? Well, first off, they did come in with the premonition that they were going to be doing the two-quarterback system. That's what they had talked about in all of the press conferences coming in. But coming into the game early on, they really looked like they were trying to establish Taylor Green. He was in there for 3 solid drives as the primary quarterback, and the first drive was an amazing drive. Taylor Green comes down with Ashton Jeanty, mixing in a little bit of Holani. Ashton Jeanty is looking incredible. George Holani is obviously having to adapt to the game a little bit after coming off of a long injury break. But then Taylor Green hits a beautiful sideline pass, deep sideline pass to an open Eric McAllister, and ends up being able to finish that drive with a touchdown. It was a perfect combination of plays to start the game. Then drive stalls out a little bit, and Boise State, after a fumble by Taylor Green on a run, goes back to the two-quarterback system that we'd seen them use, the Maddox, Madsen, Taylor Green shuffle. That was not so effective in the middle part of the game. It did end in a final touchdown for Boise State there at the end of the half, but it was a very jerky drive. Nice, one that did take up a lot of time, but they had to convert a fourth down conversion in there. They got lucky with some nice big plays, notably a massive catch by George Holani. But Boise State ending up able to score at the end of the half there. So at the end of the half, offensively, it hasn't been an explosive run for Boise State. They've only put up 113 or so passing yards and 114 or so rushing yards. The first half of the game, I ended up having to record and then skip through to get to the live point. Skip between the commercials. So I wasn't able to capture the first half score, so I had to do some math to take away what had happened when I finally got to the live point a little bit through the third quarter. Take some math away from what runs and passes had happened already, take away from the yardage total to get the first half yards. So if I'm slightly off by a few yards, that's why. But somewhere around 113 passing yards and 114 rushing yards in the first half. Maddox Madsen has only had 44 yards passing in the first half. He has not looked like he's put himself together here, and of course, no surprise, getting thrown into the game with this two-quarterback system that Boise State runs. Really trying to establish Taylor Green on. They went away from him towards the end of the second half, end of the first half with Maddox Madsen. Can he establish himself in the second half? Wyoming still within striking distance of this game. The score is only 7-15. Boise State's done a lot of incredible things on that first drive. They went down, scored, and then they went for a 2-point conversion, which was a brilliant play call. A pass from Fulton to the tight end, to Louder. So Colt Fulton to the tight end, Louder, on a perfect play call that Wyoming was not ready for, to go up 8 to start the game. But Holani hasn't looked good so far. You know, the mixing in between Holani and Jeanty has definitely hurt both players. George Holani has come in raw and not really been able to finish drives. Holani's been coming in after every large Jeanty run. Anytime Jeanty has a big play, they take Jeanty out and they move Holani in. Well, something happens towards the end of the first half. Jeanty goes to hurdle a player and ends up in injury tent after that. He doesn't come back on the field. And Boise State is forced to go away from the 50-50 Jeanty-Holani split that they were running, and they were forced to go primarily with Holani. And I think this really helped save the game for Boise State and allowed them to develop their rhythm. Second half, Boise State, no Jeanty, so they're forced to go with one running back as their primary. They've mixed in a lot of other guys throughout the game. Dubar got a lot of carries, but Holani becomes becomes the primary running back. In the second half, Helani had only had 7 rushes for 19 yards, 2.7-yard carry. He gets stronger as the game goes on. He didn't have any go-off, huge, explosive runs, but he got stronger as the game went on. He was able to build consistency, and he finished the game with 75 yards rushing and a 3.8-yard average. Remember, he started the game with less than 20 yards rushing and only 2.7-yard average. So, being allowed to establish rhythm as the main running back, he is able to come into the game in the second half and have a big part of the offense that then becomes much more consistent. Boise State also makes one big change in the second half, which allowed them to create the blowout that we saw. A lot of it on the defense as well, but offensively, Boise State did one key thing, which I really hope the coaches get the right message from this game, and that is they went with Maddox Madsen as the primary quarterback in the second half, and he went off. He'd only had 44 yards passing in the game coming into the first half. He finished the game 12 of 15 for 147 yards passing, a touchdown, 0 interceptions, and 5 rushes for 24 yards. Boise State putting up over 216 passing yards in this game, and they scored on 3 straight drives in the second half, 2 touchdowns and a field goal, all with Maddox Madsen as the primary quarterback. We actually saw the ideal, perfect 2-quarterback system used in the second half versus Wyoming. Maddox Madsen as the passing quarterback gets the main start. He's the main guy on the field. Boise State drives down the field. This is on their second drive. Oh, sorry, their first drive. On their first drive of the half, they drive down the field. Maddox Madsen throws a great pass that gets them down to the red zone. Now, Taylor Green comes in the red zone. That's what he's built for. Short yardage, red zone, running situations. Taylor Green comes in the red zone, pulls the ball to the outside, uses his speed to pull the ball and go into the end to the touchdown in about a 10-yard run. That is the 2-quarterback system worked perfectly. If you're going to run it, if you're not going to go with Taylor Green as your primary guy, if you're going to insist on running 2 players, that is the way to run the 2-quarterback system. Maddox Madsen, the passer, has to be the main guy. The passer cannot be the guy who comes off the bench cold. We saw versus Colorado State, they tried to go to Maddox Madsen as the primary late in the second half, and it was just too late. He didn't have the rhythm. They go to him at the end of the first half and early at the very beginning of the second half, and he is able to develop a rhythm with his wide receivers. His balls were on the money. He was able to get himself into the game with his legs as well. He looked like the total package in the second half because he was allowed to develop the reps as the primary quarterback. Taylor Green only took a couple of reps in the second half, and they were situational reps for him, primarily on that touchdown run. That is how you run a 2-quarterback system. That is what, if Boise State's going to insist on this, and I still agree with a lot of people that say Taylor Green should be the guy, but if he's going to be the guy, the offense has to be tweaked to his abilities, kind of like we saw in that first drive, has to be tweaked to his abilities. If you're going to run the offense that you're running, Maddox Madsen, the passer, is the guy that can do it. Taylor Green as the situational guy to come in and spell for specific plays. That is how you run a 2-quarterback system. It was run brilliantly. Maddox Madsen then being able to do a whole drive in the second drive by himself with an amazing touchdown pass to Prince Strawn, who the fans have been clamoring for. We haven't seen much of him this season, but he showed why he is a special future talent with an incredible gloves catch that was a dart right in front of the defender. He got his mitts on it and was able to, he was in the air, managed to bring that ball down for a touchdown. So great performance by Boise State in the second half, able to put everything together, scoring 3 straight drives, 2 touchdowns, and a field goal to ice this game away in the second half. Now, I really, really hope the coaches learn the right lessons from this game. After this performance, I am more optimistic about it. There's still a lot of negatives about what this coaching staff is doing, trying to come in and go with the 2-quarterback rotation versus just going with the one guy instead of making a clear-cut decision quickly and early on. And then obviously, Genty getting hurt, well, you never want to see that. He is your offense. He is explosive. He is the driving factor of this team. You never want to see him get hurt, but the system that Boise State's running with 2 running backs is not seeing the most efficient form of either of those guys either. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to run 2 running back system, having a guy get hurt and being forced to rely on your primary back that helped Boise State in the long run on this. I don't want them to do that. I want Genty, because of his explosive abilities, I want him to be the primary guy. Helani gets mixed in, but situationally, not just every big play. You take out Genty, who's now got momentum, and you put in Helani. You're killing his momentum. It would have been interesting to see how this game would have ran so far throughout the rest of it, but we know, at least from watching initially, while Genty was still able to make big plays, his potential was definitely capped by removing him after large plays, and Helani did not look on at all. He did not work in that system. Helani's a running back that needs to develop the flow of the game and to wear down the defense, and mixing both backs in and out like that does not work. So George Helani, able in the second half because of an unfortunate injury to Genty. We hope that he's okay and is able to come back and be the primary back again for the rest of the season. But due to an injury to Genty, Helani able to come in and perform well despite the coaching staff, while the coaching staff making a good decision, so bad decision with the running back situation, good decision with the quarterback situation in the second half to realize that what was going on in the first half was not working. Offensively, you were not producing the points or yards that you wanted to. Boise State in the second half, nice long drives with a primary quarterback making the right decisions. Hopefully, when the coaching staff looks at this, they don't say the two quarterback system worked. It didn't. Boise State scored on 5 drives. On 4 of those drives, there was one primary quarterback in the game. The first drive with Taylor Green, which was the designed play drive where you have a pre-canned drive that you've been practicing. After that, he looked off, but then you went to Maddox Madsen and you scored on 3 drives. There was only one drive where you had a true quarterback shuffle, and even then, Maddox Madsen was the primary on that drive, but there was a little bit more of a shuffle with Taylor Green. Only one drive, the last drive of the second half, did Boise State actually have a real 2 quarterback, doesn't make sense type situation. That was the only drive they scored on in that scenario. All the rest of the drives were with one quarterback. So the coaches, if they're going to learn a lesson from this game, it's that one quarterback works. And if you're going to run a 2 quarterback system, Maddox Madsen has to be the base of that system because Taylor Green is much more efficient off the bench than Maddox Madsen is off the bench. So overall, Taylor Green, taken out of the game early as the primary guy in the first half. So 3 of 6 for 69 yards, a touchdown, no picks, 32 yards rushing and a touchdown. But he also had a fumble. If he doesn't have that fumble, maybe they go down and score on that drive for one, but also maybe we get to see more of him establishing himself in this game. Coaches made a good decision, though, to go with Maddox Madsen as the primary. As we saw in the second half, he developed steam, only had 3 incomplete passes the entire game for 147 yards, also showing off his legs, showing that he can be the complete package in this offensive system. So overall, some hope for the future here. Genty hopefully comes back. I don't think that it didn't look like it was season ending. He looked like he was fine, but it also looked like a situation where the coaches were like, okay, we have Helani back. He can take the load. Dubar is able to step up. Dubar had 12 carries for 45 yards, 3.8 yard average, and a touchdown. We have the backfield. Let's not risk anything. Come back next week. I'm hoping that's what it looked like. I think Genty's going to be fine. But overall, there's a lot of hope in the future for this offense because it looks like the coaching staff is finally figuring out what to do right with this offense, and hopefully they continue that trend into the rest of the season. A big part of getting this win versus Wyoming. However, if we're going to look at, grading the offensive performance overall, Boise State puts up 32 points. They put up 443 yards total of offense. They make good decisions to go with a primary quarterback. And, they try to start off with Green as the primary quarterback. When he's not working, they put in Maddox Madsen as primary quarterback. That's how you want to see it. That's honestly how you want to, if you're going to go with 2 guys, that's how you want to see it. Try to go with one, let him play. If he's not working and you stuck with him for 3 drives and he's starting to spiral, then you put in the second guy as your primary and then you stick with him. That is how you want to run the 2 quarterback system, and Boise State did it well. So overall on this game, A- performance overall offensively. Could have been better in the first half, but did a really great job of putting things together in the second half. Defensively, though, this game was won by the defense. Yes, the offense put up great yards and great points overall. Huge props to the offense on this, but defensively, this is a Wyoming team that was, they weren't the biggest, most explosive offense in the Mountain West, but they were a strong, competent offense, and Boise State made them look like they had no idea what they were doing. 112 total yards. 112 total yards in this game. I believe that's the first time. I saw a stat on ESPN that says the first time Boise State's held an opponent to under 13 yards since 2011. 112 total yards versus a team that beat Fresno State. a team that beat Texas Tech, a team that was close to beating number 4 Texas at the time. 112 total yards, 85 yards passing, only 27 yards rushing. Yes, this was not a team that was putting up 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard passer so far this season, though they did almost have a 1,000-yard passer. But this was not a team that was putting up 200-plus yards rushing and passing every game. That's what I was trying to say. But they were putting up 160.3 yards a pass and 164.4 yards rush per game so far this season. So this was a team that was competent, balanced, and Boise State shut down both elements in this matchup. Boise State's defense, bye-week adjustments and coaching staff adjustments. If there's one thing that this coaching staff needs to be looked at as having massive credit owed to them, it's the adjustments on defense. Andy Avalos working in tune with Spencer Danielson. That's his strength. I've said all year long that Andy Avalos needs to let go of the offense, give Bush Hamden more control, and it definitely looked like Bush Hamden had more control in this game, and focus on the defense. That's your specialty. That's what you know how to do. That's what's struggling. Work with Spencer Danielson to come up with a plan, and the two of them together looks like they came up with a perfect solution in this game. More blitzes, which I've been calling for, and I know I'm not the only one, but I've been calling for all season. Boise State finally brought it. They were bringing pressure on almost every single play. Wyoming's quarterback here, Andrew Peasley, he looked out of phase the entire game, and most of it was because of that pressure. Wyoming's offense was clearly off in this game. This was probably their worst offensive performance this season. And so part of the credit definitely goes to the fact that Wyoming just didn't play well. But the reason they didn't play well is because this defense was so dominant, and it all started with the pressure up front. Boise State was getting penetration on almost every single play, something they have struggled to do this season. They had multiple sacks, huge lost yardage sacks, tackles for a loss. When Peasley could get the ball out, the coverage was good. Yes, there were several times that he missed open receivers because, again, he's off because of that pressure. So even when he's missing, that's still on the defense and the pressure that they're bringing. But when he did get the ball in the place where the receiver could have caught it, the defensive coverage was good all game long. They were able to cover without fouling for the most part, and Boise State put up a massive defensive effort in this game. One of the best I've seen all season, one of the best I've ever seen on the Andy Avalos staff. This was an incredible performance by this defense. It was great team defense overall, across the board, players all over the field. Shea Oladipo, the second drive, he stops a run by Andrew Peasley where he could have broken for a first down, which then forces them into a third and long where Simpson's able to go get the sack. And it was just that kind of team chemistry where there was never an opportunity besides one play after a muffed fumble. They were able to score a touchdown, a little bit of a momentum swing. But even in that moment, Boise State in the past, when teams have been able to score on a deep strike, it's rattled them. It's changed their defensive approach. They didn't do that in this game. One score by Wyoming, they shake it off. They get right back to almost getting a safety on the next drive. Peasley completely rattled. Pressure, it's just all across the board. Boise State doesn't allow themselves to be put off pace by Wyoming doing a little bit shift of momentum. Boise State quickly steals the momentum right back defensively and offensively in this game. It was an incredible performance overall by the coaching staff. We saw Andy Avalos with a little bit of emotion on the sideline, a little bit fired up, and also getting in the face of some defenders when they made mistakes. In the second half, Shea Oladipo gets a taunting penalty called on him. Boise State's already won the game pretty much at this point. Obviously crazy things like Colorado State can happen, but at this point, Boise State's already won the game. Shea Oladipo has a taunting penalty called on him. The coaching staff could have shook it off, but no, Andy Avalos got mad. He got in Shea Oladipo's face, who's played a great game, gets in his face and says, that's not acceptable, in so many words. And that is the kind of emotion that we've been looking for Andy Avalos on the sideline. Something to tell this team that he's there, to pump up the team on the sideline and to hold them accountable when they're making mistakes. It was a very, very different coaching staff that we saw. If this coaching staff can continue these adjustments, if they can make some more adjustments offensively, learn the right lessons offensively, continue this defensive performance, combined with the special teams, which has been great all season overall, If they can do this, not only could Boise State have a chance of potentially actually getting to the Mountain West Championship this game, but there is a chance that their coaching careers could be looking more secure. There's still a lot of questions on this season, and there's still a lot left on this season. But this is what we've been asking for all year. And even though I've been calling for a head coaching change, and I just made a video talking about who will be the next head coach at Boise State, and I still believe that in the next 2 years there will be a new head coach at Boise State, because next year, regardless of what happens this season, I think the bar is set for Boise State to need to get to being in Fiesta Bowl eligibility, and not Fiesta Bowl eligibility, New Year's Six playoff contention. And at this point, I just don't see that yet. But I'm starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. I want Boise State to turn things around. I want Andy Avalos and this head coaching staff to prove me wrong. I don't want him to be fired. That's not what I am wishing for. I want him to do well. I want Boise State to perform well. I don't have a vendetta against this coaching staff. I don't have anything personal against any of them. As Boise State members, and as, Andy Avalos as a former receiver, I love all of them, and I want all of them to do well. As a fan, that's what I want. But the issue is, as an analyst, I see what I see. I see the facts and the data that's before me, and I have to make the calls that I make. And the calls that have been made so far is that up to this game, Andy Avalos was not showing that he had what it took to be the head coach, and he was directly responsible for multiple Boise State losses or near losses this season and in previous seasons. However, this showed a different approach. There are still issues. There are still poor adjustments being made, or poor approaches coming into the game being made offensively for Boise State, but they are making better adjustments on defense. They are making better adjustments on offense. There is a different approach to this coaching staff. If they can continue this climb, this trajectory, potentially they can dig themselves out of this hole that they've built and winning solves all wrong. So if Boise State can continue this trend, they have a chance. I said coming into this game that this was the turning point, the focal point. Memphis was the turning point for whether Boise State was on a trajectory to a New Year's Six, on a trajectory to potentially a losing season, or 7-5 and just a mediocre season and a potential head coaching change. I said that Wyoming was the focal point for whether or not that coaching change was going to become a near certainty, or if Boise State was going to have a chance at a Mountain West Championship game. This was the game. This was the all-important game, and this staff approached this game like it was that all-important game for this program. They had the right attitude, they had the right mentality, they had the right focus, and they made overall the right adjustments and came in with the right game plan. So defensively, huge performance across the board. Ahmad Hassanin had a massive sack. Gums had a massive sack. Andrew Simpson, 6 tackles overall, a sack, and 3 tackles for loss. Like I said, Ahmad Hassanin, he had a sack and a tackle for loss. Virgin, again, he has come on so strong in the season. He was making his presence felt. Only 1 tackle for loss, but he had a lot of pressure on the quarterback this game as well. Boise State was calling secondary blitzes. They had a call where they pulled in a safety. They pulled a safety in on a blitz that then forced Andrew Peasley to release the ball into place he shouldn't have, and Ty Bensfield came up with an interception. So safety causes a pick by the safety. It was an amazing play call. That is what we've been looking for out of Boise State. Aggressive defense to make up for the complete lack of penetration they've had so far this season. Overall, Spencer Danielson coming in with the right approach and the right game plan, and I have to believe that Andy Avalos was a part of that, being able to make these adjustments. The one concern I do have defensively is that DJ Schramm had 0 tackles. He was out there, but he had 0 tackles, which is fine, except that Marco Notarani, who had stepped into DJ Schramm's shoes, only had 1 tackle, which is his lowest since Washington. Marco Notarani has been the defensive leader for this team. While you want Schramm, who's the team captain, to also be a part of this program, be a part of this team, it's kind of like having to pair Genty and Halani. If both of them are capable of playing, you have to find a way that doesn't take away from the momentum you have with a player that's having success right now, which is what Boise State was doing prior to Genty's injury, when they were then forced to go primarily with Halani, and Halani was able to step up and have a nice game the rest of the game there. But with Schramm and Notarani is right now the spark on this defense. He, at that middle linebacker position, he has been playing so well this season. He deserves to be out there. And so you need to either find a way that you can mix them in both evenly, and again, with having to fast forward through the timeouts and skip in between right at the end of the downs and kind of going fast through the first end of the first part of this game. I wasn't really able to see or really focus in on who was out there defensively, Schramm and Notarani. I know I saw Schramm, and I'm pretty sure I saw Notarani as well, but you've got to find a way to make sure you don't take away from what Notarani brings to this team. So that's going to be an interesting juggling match here for Spencer Donaldson, trying to figure out how to juggle the skill sets of both of these players so they're both able to perform. However, neither of them, their lack of impact on this game made a massive impact overall, because Boise State's defense came up huge, and overall this is an A-plus performance. There's almost nothing negative you can say about this Boise State defensive effort, what they were able to put on the field today. I guess the one thing you could say is it would have been nice for Shea Oladipo, for him personally, to have that pick six at the end that he dropped, but I mean that's why he plays defense. He does have good hands. He's shown in the past with the interception ability, but sometimes you're just too open for the, they say that about wide receivers, but sometimes as a defender, the pick is just too easy, and you see that end zone glowing in front of you, and it's just too much. So it didn't impact the game. It wasn't an important pick. It would just, personally for him, you would have loved to have seen him do that, but it's not going to impact the overall grade. A++, one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen out of a Boise State team recently, and definitely out of an Andy Avalos coach team. This was an amazing performance overall, and I have to believe that this improvement came back to Andy Avalos putting in the right focus and attention defensively over the bye week. So wrapping this up real quick with the special teams and the keys to the game. Special teams for Jonah Dalmez, 1 of 2, long of 48. There was a miss that was not his fault. It was a bad snap. So Boise State's had a couple of those this season where there's just been some issues not on the kicker. There's been issues in the blocking scheme. There's been some issues in the snapping and the holding. So Boise State's got to figure out what's going on there and make some adjustments. Didn't become important in this game, but could in future matchups that might come down to the wire, like Air Force and Fresno State, if Boise State's able to play the way that they're playing so far. But there was a point where the announcer was saying, why are they going for a field goal here? It was 4th and 1, and then a foul, unfortunately, forced it down to about 4th and 5, 4th and 5.5, and Boise State went for a field goal. And the announcer said, why are you going for a field goal here? You're already up, I think they were up 22 at that point. What difference is this going to make? Just go for the first down and ice the game. I mean, there is a point to that, but I think this was an important move. To go for the longer field goal after the muff on the first play, the first attempt by Jonah Dalmez, allows him to come into the second game with momentum. It allows him to reestablish the confidence in himself and the unit with a nice long field goal and continue to work towards his own goals. I mean, he's only 2 kicks away from beating Kyle Brosman's record right now. I liked the decision in that point. That was a good head coaching decision to go for the field goal, and, it increases that gap where before you were up 22 and you lost in the last 4 minutes. I mean, that helps increase the point gap, but more importantly, overall, it allows Boise State, Jonah Dalmez here, to forget about the muff and the miss, and that the last thing he's thinking about now when he goes into next week is he's thinking about that made field goal and not the missed one that he had and only going over one. So I like that decision. James Ferguson Reynolds continues to be the best punter in America, and I am making that statement. He is the best punter I have ever seen come to Boise State, and this season he is the best punter in America, hands down. 68-yard long that ended up inside the 5. He had 2 incredible punts. I mean, all his punts are amazing, but he had 2 incredible punts. One that just went, that might have been the 68-yarder, I'm not sure, but 50-plus yards and stops at inside the 5. Doesn't roll, doesn't bounce, just stops dead. I mean, you cannot coach that. That's just natural ability. And then he had another one where it was just perfectly placed ball with the roll. It landed at like the 25 and rolled all the way down inside the 5. Again, another brilliant punt. And his third punt trickled out of bounds inside the 10. Incredible performance overall. He is on track right now statistically. If you didn't watch my interview with Ron Counts where we looked at the season so far, he is on track this season to have the best punting performance of a Boise State player all time. Single season record right now is 45.8 yards in a season average. Right now, and that average is going to go up after this game, he's averaging 49.5 yard average. So he is on track to have the best single season record all time for a Boise State punter. And we cannot say enough of how lucky we are as a team as a fan base to have him on this team. An absolutely incredible performance overall. There was a dropped punt return by Cobbs that allowed a touchdown, and there was the muffed kick, or not muffed kick, but the muffed snap that then ended up in a miss. But Cobbs made, Jordan Dobbs made up for it with the long field goal. Cobbs made up for it with a 14-yard return, which is one of the few punt returns this season for Boise State and the longest so far this season for Boise State. So there was some positivity there. Overall, I'm going to give them a B+, because of some of those errors that could have been major if the defense wasn't so strong, but really strong performance from the key players on special teams again. So real quick, how did Boise State perform against my keys of the game? Don't ruin a good thing, which was talking about how don't hurt Genty by trying to mix it, not physically hurt, but don't hurt his potential by mixing in Helani in an awkward way. Well, that was going for an F initially, but it became a NA factor when Genty went out with an injury. So just going to grade that one as NA because we didn't get to see the full game, how that would have worked out. But Boise State definitely not running a system that was playing to Genty's strengths, where they kept taking him out after big plays instead of allowing him to continue to build on that performance. And definitely going for what looked like a 50-50 running back split versus a Genty primary, Helani secondary look. Tight ends. Boise State was focusing on tight ends in this game. You had Riley Smith had 2 receptions and Louder had a 2-point conversion. Overall, receiving wise, it wasn't a huge game for Boise State when you're talking about mixing up the receivers, which has not been the trend for Boise State anyway this season. Eric McAllister had another huge game, which I forgot to mention when I was talking about the offense. 7 receptions for 160 yards and a touchdown. But after Helani and Genty were accounted for, Helani also having 17 yards on 3 receptions, after their yardage was taken out. So Eric McAllister, George Helani, once you take their yardage out of the game, there was only 39 yards spread between 4 other receivers the rest of the game. So those 2 guys are your entire receiving game right now. Prince Strawn's touchdown, Riley Smith had 2 catches. But for Boise State, offensively, they're still working to find those secondary players, but they definitely seem to be focusing on trying to get Riley Smith the ball and involving him in the passing game, and obviously using Louder on that trick play. The tight ends are becoming a focus in this offense again, so I'm going to give that a B+ overall. I would still like to see more offense out of the tight ends, but it definitely seemed like it was a part of the game plan for them. And they were going with some multiple tight end sets in that matchup today, regardless of who was out there at quarterback, which is what I was calling for. So overall, I liked what Boise State did with their tight ends. And then embrace the defensive battle. Obviously, for Boise State, this was offensively, it wasn't much of a defensive battle. Wyoming didn't come to play defensively, and Boise State ran all over them, which is, again, so impressive because of how good this Wyoming defense is. This is a great Wyoming defense, one of the best, probably the best. I was saying coming to this game the best. I'm not so sure after this matchup, but one of the best, if not the best, defenses in the Mountain West. And Boise State, once they adjusted their offensive scheme to give a primary focus on one quarterback, ran all over them, even with Genty out. And I think that really shows the potential of this roster. Everybody has been saying that, this is not Andy Avalos' roster. It's only his 3rd year in. There's still young players. You got to give him a break based on that. And I've said no. I've said this roster is too good to be going this poorly at record-wise overall. I know that was kind of a not great way to say all that, but basically this roster is too good to be performing this poorly. And we saw today what a more properly run, still not ideal, but more properly run system offensively could do versus a great defense. This wasn't some middle-of-the-road defense. This was an outstanding defense that Boise State put up 32 points and over 400 yards of offense on, and they did it because they made the right adjustments to go with a primary-based quarterback in this game. That is what Boise State needs to do. They have a great roster offensively. They have one of the deepest running backs or rosters you've ever seen at Boise State. They have 2 great quarterbacks can both get it done if put in the right position. And they have an incredible wide receiver in Eric McAllister and definitely some other potentials on this team offensively. It's not the best roster for Boise State, but it's a good one. And if handled correctly by the coaching staff, can be great. So for Boise State this game, coming into it versus Wyoming, they embraced the defensive battle on their side. Boise State's defense was lights out. If we see that performance, like if Boise State performs the way that they just did defensively the rest of the season, they will get to the Mountain West Championship game. Now, it's going to be a big if because they're going to play against some offenses that are better than Wyoming's, and we'll have to see how that stands. But the adjustments have been made. If Boise State's defense continues to perform at this level, they will get to the Mountain West Championship game. Boise State's offense has been the question mark, and we'll have to see how the coaches continue to adjust with them. But but talent-wise, the roster is there. Boise State's coaching staff just has to figure out how to use it properly. Today, while not perfect, we definitely saw them moving in the right direction of using this offense correctly. So embrace the defensive battle. Boise State's defense did that, and Boise State, I'm going to give that an A+ overall. They were lights out. There was no letdown. There was no second half letdown, which we've seen a lot from Boise State's defense. You kind of kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it never did. Start to finish was a great performance by Boise State's defense today from every aspect, from the D-line to the linebackers to the secondary. Incredible performance overall by Boise State's defense. So I am incredibly pumped after this game. I'm very excited about the future of this season. There's hope now. I'm not calling Boise State the Mountain West Championship game. I know I'm saying that they could, and that's been the truth all season. This is a roster that could have gone to a New Year's Six. They could have done that. So, there's still a lot of what is going to happen because at this point, it all relies on the coaching staff and what adjustments they're going to make. But this roster, and they themselves have proven, this coaching staff and this roster have proven they have the potential. So now we know what they're capable of. Now we know what could happen this season. Boise State could go on an undefeated run from here on out or only lose one more game and get to the Mountain West Championship game. They could do that, or something else could happen, and we could see a very different end of the season. Either way, that is now all on the hands of the head coach, all in the hands of the head coach, Andy Avalos here. What happens from here on out? He's proven he can do it. What will happen is now based on what he decides to do the rest of the season. There can be no excuses. There are no more excuses for this coaching staff. You can't blame the schedule. You can't blame the roster. You can't blame any of that. Boise State has shown that they can do it. So now, win or lose, it is on the head coaching staff, and they are going to be the ones accountable for how this season ends up finishing. So I am incredibly excited and hoping that this means that Boise State has turned a corner, that we can start moving away from this coaching change discussion to a point where Andy Avalos can start to establish himself again, and we can see a bright future for this team. That's what I'm hoping as a fan, and I'm hoping that I'm saying hoping a lot, but that's what I'm really looking to hope, that the analytics continue to back that up and the statistics start to change in favor of this team, because we definitely saw them make a change here for Boise State, and I'm incredibly excited about the future of this program. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on this video. Let me know your thoughts on this performance. Are you as excited as I am for the potential of this team? Or are you still maybe a little bit more pessimistic about what may happen? Again, I'm not saying Boise State's going to go undefeated. I'm not saying they're going to go to the Mountain West Championship game. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm saying that the potential is there. The future is not bright yet, but there is some light, whereas before we were completely buried and there was only darkness. So excited about what may happen here towards the end of the season. Either way, it's going to be an interesting one, so make sure you keep following the channel. We'll have great content coming out the rest of the year, game previews, game reviews, and anything else relevant to Boise State. So thanks again for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, go Big Blue!